outside of Nigeria. I mean, just look at what is on the screen right now. Look at the flakes, the what's it called now? Um, Canned food that I talked about earlier on. Um, Foreign biscuits, like we have confectionaries and what have you. You see that they dominate the. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. When you consume a locally made biscuit in Nigeria and that of a foreign made or produced ones, you definitely want to go for the foreign, produced biscuits, for instance, those confectionaries. So that's what we are talking about. And then you look at Nigerian farms against imported packaged foods. Now, when you look at I know recently, I mean, when you still go to these shopping malls, you still see some locally produced food items on our shopping malls, but you see the packaging. You compare that to the foreign packaged goods or food, nobody will tell you to go for the foreign food and leave the locally produced or packaged food. So the packaging is all that matters. And our farmers, it's not like our farmers do not produce food, but they do not meet the demand when it comes to the number of people to feed, or the demand coming in from the consumers, or the packaging as well. And also billions spent importing food. When we talk about port activity, when you go to most of these ports, especially those in Lagos, you see that most of the containers that are offloading items, they are food items. Most of the items are food items that are coming into the country, and for that, Nigeria spend billions of naira importing food that we can also produce locally. So Nigeria is not food scarce. Like I said, we have people who are ready to produce food locally, agriculturally, but it is a system deficiency that we are seeing in this country. And if we can work on that, definitely we could be seeing more food locally produced and more demand for them. So if imports are filling the gap, like I said earlier on, the next question will now be, why can't local farmers meet demand? We talked about how it is that I think it was during the Buhari administration where the borders were closed or shut down in order for us to feed the nation by ourselves. We had the rice pyramid and all of that. I don't know what has happened to all of that now. We saw locally produced rice going round and, of course, meeting demand of the Nigerian populace, but they didn't really meet the demand. That is where we'll leave it at there. But we'll still go on a break. But before we go on that break, let's quickly also tell you that let's look at the demand and supply gap when it comes to food production in Nigeria. Like I said, statistically, we are told that we are more than 200 million. Yeah, no doubt about that. That's the population. But the rapid urban food demand growth is really, really high. When you put this vis-a-vis the supply, because we're looking at the demand section now, you look at rapid urban food demand growth, how it is demanded, food is demanded. I look at the population growth. Like I said, for me personally, I think we've hit the 300 million mark. But look at the population growth, or let's say over 200 million, and the demand for food. You look at the vis-a-vis the supply gap, where we see the constraints, production shortfalls, where we see low yields, limited inputs, and of course, climate challenges that reduce output. When we say low yields and limited inputs, we also talk about insecurity in areas where local food production could be happening. We also look at inefficient systems like poor infrastructure, high post-harvest losses, and of course, weak markets that limit food availability. So, demand is rising faster than supply. I mean, if we say we want to look inwards, the demand is higher than the supply. All right, we'll take a breather now. When we return, we'll be looking at we'll look inside the import machine. Why why is it that the foreign goods are dominating the market? Stay with us.
Welcome to DERSAG Engineering and Services Limited. We hold several specialized permits with the Department of Petroleum Resources, are accredited with service and product codes by NIPEX, certified by Dun & Bradstreet, and proudly ISO 9001:2015 certified. Our areas of expertise cut across critical sectors, including manpower sourcing and supply, engineering services, construction and fabrication works, specialized procurement and supply, operations and maintenance services, and integrated marine services, delivering supply boats, crew boats, tugboats, barges, houseboats, and speed boats. At DERSAG Engineering, we are committed to quality, safety, and timely delivery, ensuring that every project meets and exceeds expectations. DERSAG Engineering and Services Limited, your trusted partner in delivering world-class engineering and energy solutions.
All right, welcome back from that pause. And of course, if you just joined us, this is Morning Market on TVM. All right, before we went on the break, I said we'll be looking at why foreign food dominates. I mean, before on the other segment, the previous segment, we saw on the shopping mall shelves how foreign foods dominate those shelves. So one thing that we should understand is that Nigeria is not actually a country that is not blessed with natural resources. One of them, agriculture as it is. We are blessed with, land that are not only arable, land that are very, very good for agriculture. So when we talk about food imports, it's not accidental. It's a structural thing. It's something that ought not to be. But like I said, the system is an issue. But let's look at some of the core reasons or factors why this issue of foreign food food imports dominating the system right now. First of all, we'll look at demand outrunning supply. We touched on it in the first segment. Demand outrunning or outpacing supply. Now, when you have, in economics generally, where the demand is higher than the supply, then there is deficiency, there is lack, there is insufficiency of that particular thing that is being demanded. Now, in this particular sphere, we are looking at food. The locally produced food are not enough for the populace, so to speak. So the demand for food, for instance, we talked about the issue of fish, because I know when we showed that slide that Nigeria imports 50% of the food that fish that we eat today. I know some persons will be like, but there's fish everywhere now. Well, there are some fish that we eat that are not from Nigeria. All right? I know it's surprising to you, but that's the reality of things, because the fish that we have here will not be able to go around. So we have to augment, we have to bring in to cover that deficit, so to speak, in economic terms. So that's why we say about 50% of fish that we eat are imported into the country. So like I said, demand outpacing supply. What about wheat? Yes, we have to a level we produce wheat in Nigeria, but you see the estimate, the analysis I gave earlier on, 95% of the wheat we use today in the country are imported. So if we had to, rely on the about 5% that we produce, it will not be enough for local consumption. So you understand. Now, under the rapid, for the demand outpacing the supply, like I said, rapid population growth is the major reason for that demand outpacing supply. Because when you have a lot of people in a small place, for instance, I'm just giving this instance now, you have a lot of people in a place where you have just a limited amount of water to go around that large number of people. Before it gets to the last person, that water will be, finished before even half of that crowd that is waiting to tap from that water will get to them. So rapid population growth is a thing that brings about demand outspacing supply. What about changing of diets? Now, I talked about wheat, right? 95% of the wheat we consume today is imported into the country. Now, for those who have health issues, especially the diabetic patients, they are told to go take wheat bread, right? So changing of diets is as a result of that. What about noodles? Sometimes we say locally produced noodles are not even healthy to consume, so to speak. There was a time a certain company, noodle producing company, was called out that they were producing fake noodles that were affecting the health of people, though they came out and probably withdrew that particular product or came to counter that statement. But all the same, we had issues. Then frozen foods. Talking about frozen foods, fish again will come into this particular discussion. So this is all under demand and supply. Then the next is wheat problem. Another factor why we're seeing imported food dominating our local food. Now, the climate mismatch for large-scale production of wheat is a very worrisome factor. Wheat, the condition that we have here, does not actually encourage large wheat production or large-scale production of wheat. So that is a problem. And heavy reliance on imports for flour industry is another thing. Yes, flour is another food item that we import largely from abroad. I mean, what we have here in Nigeria is not enough. Let's look at the wheat dependency crisis in Nigeria. Maybe you get to understand all that I have been talking about. This is data packed, so it's not my own analysis on this particular one. Now, Nigeria's wheat supply is overwhelmingly on imports that are imported in the country. Like I said, local production of wheat is less than 10%. If you remember, I said it's about 5%, approximately 5%. Why the imported wheat, like we talked earlier on, is from between 90 to 95%. All right. So wheat imports are projected, according to the data in front of us, says it's 4.4 million tons. All right. Now, this is very worrisome. 4.4 million tons. So Nigeria depends heavily on imported wheat. We've talked about this one. Let's go to our next factor why we have imported food dominating the Nigerian market. Cost advantage of imports is another factor that should be looked into. Now, global economies of scale is on one hand, then subsidized agriculture in exporting countries is another hand. Now, when we talk about cost advantage of imports, was it a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday? We're talking about the comparative advantage of Nigeria, and we're asking, what is it? Anyway, let's not go into all of that. But global economies of scale has made it very difficult for us to have more of locally produced food that will compete with the imported food, so to speak. Now, because of the way agricultural produce are subsidized, it invariably means that anyway, this is just trying to help the locally produced ones for exportation purposes. So even the few that we have, that we are producing, that is supposed to feed the nation, we are even exporting them. All right, so this is what this is all about. Let's look at the food import drivers of the economy, where we'll talk about, where we've already talked about some of them. Population growth, yeah. This is one of the driving factors, population growth, where we have a rising population increases demand for food, like I said earlier on. You know, there's no way that you have, for instance, let's take an instance of the Warri metropolis. Let's assume that as at 2024, the population in this city was about 4 million people. As at 2025, it rose, I'm just assuming now, that it rose to from 4 million to about 6 million. Now, the demand for some certain things in the city will increase. Those who are producing those certain things will fall short of supply. All right, so this is, I just brought that angle so that you understand this population growth. So when there's a rising population, this brings about increase in demand for food. So these are some of the drivers or the factors that are fueling Nigeria's reliance on food imports. Where the population growth increases, the locally produced food do not meet the demand of that population. What about FX dependency? Now, the FX dependency is all about the foreign exchange. Now, Nigeria relies so much on foreign exchange to pay for imports. So when we import food, we tend to pay, pay for these imported foods via the foreign exchange. And you know, the foreign exchange, when your currency is put vis-a-vis with the exchange currency, in this particular sense, the dollar, you look at how it is. I mean, when you bring in your food, for instance, I'm trying to make this as simple as I can. When you bring in your food into the country, you want to ensure that it will not be something that will put a lot of hole in the pocket. Now, even if it does put a lot of hole in our pockets, Nigerians, from what we have seen over the years, tend to rely or depend wholly or so much on these foreign goods or foreign foods than even our locally produced food. I gave an instance of rice. I gave an instance of wheat. Your rice, for instance.
This is TVM. TVM delivers breaking stories, global headlines, and the moments that matter. From exciting sports action to exclusive local events, we keep you connected. Celebrate our culture, people, and voices with powerful documentaries and inspiring stories. Experience premium entertainment, from trending music to urban lifestyle and beyond. Grow your spirit with life-changing messages and uplifting perspectives. Lead the way with bold conversations, fresh ideas, and thought-provoking shows. Wherever you are, whenever you want, watch TVM on all your devices. TVM, your world, your network.
Hello and welcome to TVM's Metro Update. We're broadcasting live from our studios in Warri, Delta State. I am Olamilekon Christopher, and these are the news making rounds this hour. The Executive Chairman of the Isoko Local Government Council area of Delta State, Honorable Elder Chief Prince Godwin Ogbarugba, has reaffirmed his administration's zero-tolerance stance against kidnapping, terrorism, banditry, and all forms of criminality in the local government. The chairman made the declaration during an high-level security stakeholders meeting attended by traditional rulers, head of security agencies, community leaders, political stakeholders, and representatives of youth and women groups. Speaking at the meeting, Honorable Ogbarugba stressed the need for stronger collaboration among security agencies, community leaders, and residents to enhance intelligence gathering and ensure prompt responses to security threats. He urged traditional rulers and community leadership to ensure that all vigilante personnel are carefully selected, properly profiled, and operate strictly within the confines of the law. As part of measures to strengthen security across the local government, the chairman directed security agencies to clamp down on any unauthorized group operating under the guise of vigilante or volunteer security outfits, warning that such groups will not be tolerated. He also announced a restriction on the operation of commercial motorcycle, popularly known as Okada riders, across Isoko North local government. Effective immediately, all commercial motorcycle operators must cease operations by 10 p.m. daily. The Delta State Police Command executed a massive intelligence-led raid across the state capital, Asaba, resulting in the arrest of 202 suspects. The major security operation successfully apprehended 102 males and 100 females over the weekend. This operation was launched to directly combat rising urban crime, restore civil order, and enforce safety laws within the metropolitan areas. The targeted operations took place across strategically mapped criminal hideouts, illicit drug den, and illegal brothels throughout the Asaba metropolis. Under the leadership of the Deputy Governor of Police in charge of operations, tactical security forces swarmed these specific flashpoints. In addition to the mass arrest, security forces aggressively impounded several vehicles, tricycles, and motorcycles found violating state traffic regulations and restrictions. The police public relations officer, SP Bright Idafi, confirmed the details of these operations, stating that all suspects are being processed as investigations continue. The Delta State Police Command has also arrested a 22-year-old man by the name Michael James for allegedly staging his own abduction to extort 25 million naira from his relatives. The suspect is currently in police custody as law enforcement officials conclude the processing of the case. This arrest aims to curb fraud, deter false reporting, and prevent individuals from utilizing critical security resources for financial exploitation. The State Commissioner of Police, CP Yemi Oyineyi, disclosed the details of the incident during a formal press briefing held in Asaba, the Delta State capital. The timeline began on Wednesday, July 1st, 2026, where the command received an initial distress report that James had gone missing at approximately 7:30 a.m. after leaving home to dispose a refuse. Shortly following the disappearance, the family began receiving ransom demands from anonymous callers. The operational response focused on Owualero Road access, extending into surrounding tickets where the suspect was believed to be held hostage. Tactical operations launched an immediate rescue operation, deploying intelligence-led tracking and condoning off the bushes. The operation shifted abruptly when James emerged from the bush independently, claiming he had successfully escaped from his captors. To uncover the truth, police investigators subjected the suspect to rigorous interrogation, which exposed the abduction story as a complete hoax. James confessed to orchestrating the entire plot after spending money entrusted to him by his sister, creating the fake ransom demand to recoup the lost funds from his family. Authorities confirmed that suspect remains detained while investigations continue ahead of formal legal prosecution. The Asagba of Asaba has directed the immediate prohibition of sale of the ogbono seed across all indigenous markets in Asaba Kingdom. The palace issued a decree to enforce an age-old custom rooted in the kingdom's long-standing traditional and spiritual heritage. The leadership emphasized that the regulation is strictly focused on preserving ancestral customs with local trade spaces. The directives were formally announced on Saturday during a press briefing by the 14th Omar Ahaba of Asaba Kingdom, Obi Chief Dr. Ada, along the Ndieze Ahaba. The palace officials explained that Asagba recently observed the seeds being openly sold in indigenous markets, prompting immediate royal intervention. To ensure a smooth transition, the kingdom is launching a sensitization campaign through market leaders and union executives to educate traders before penalties are introduced. Administratively, the Royal Cabinet is establishing a dedicated task force to monitor compliance and sanction traders who default on the new market rules. The Omu Ahaba declared that the prohibition applies strictly to commercial sales within the kingdom's indigenous market and does not stop non-indigenous or residents from consuming the soup. Individuals who wish to eat it are advised to purchase the seeds outside Asaba borders to prevent private home preparation rather. The Ndieze Ahaba expressed full support to the palace decision, pledging to work directly with market authorities to ensure the ban is effectively and peacefully implemented. While traditional institutions maintain that enforcing these market boundaries is vital to respecting the cultural identity of the kingdom. A Delta State High Court sitting in Isiokolo has sentenced 54-year-old Samson to 20 years imprisonment for raping his 4-year-old daughter. Justice O. Afokeya delivered the definite conviction after reviewing the evidence and finding the defendant guilty of the offense. The judicial ruling aims to enforce strict legal protections for minors, penalize sexual violence, and uphold constitutional laws against abuse. The prosecution, led by Ms. Fibian Onokpamome of the Delta State Ministry of Justice, established that the crime occurred at Ilo Compound, Ovu, within the Ethiopia's local government area of Delta State. The timeline of this offense dates back to May 14, 2020, inside the residential compound. The legal process concluded following a multi-year trial that began immediately after the defendant's initial arrest and subsequent arraignment on June 8, 2020. The state prosecution presented detailed evidence and witness testimonies to prove that the actions of the defendant directly violated statutory laws. Upon receiving the arguments from both the state and the defense, Justice Afokeya determined the prosecution has proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt to execute the court's judgment. The convicted individual was immediately reprimanded into the custody of the Nigerian Correctional Service to begin serving his 20-year sentence. The Ministry of Justice confirmed the successful prosecution as part of ongoing state efforts to ensure legal accountability for gender-based and child abuse crimes. The Pan-Niger Delta Forum has officially criticized the federal government over the exclusion of the South-South region from its newly approved 3.9 trillion road infrastructural projects. The socio-cultural group voiced its grievances during a press conference in Abuja to address perceived structural imbalances in regional development. The forum stated that sidelining the oil-rich territory for massive federal investment undermines national cohesion and fairness. The regional protest follows a decision made on Monday, June 29, 2026, during the Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu. Government officials has announced that the humongous financial approvals to execute 25 major highway initiatives spanning 15 different states. PANDEF's leadership raised immediate objections directly after details of the nationwide project distribution was made by the Ministry of Works. The core issue centers on conflict zones and major corridors within the Niger Delta that have been heavily affected by long-standing infrastructural deficits. PANDEF's national chairman, Ambassador Godknows Igali, pointed out that out of 26 major highway projects, none transverse core South-South states. The closest approved route is a 886 billion road connecting Benue to Cross River, leaving the rest of the revenue-generating region disconnected by dilapidated networks. To resolve this challenge, the forum is publicly urging President Tinubu to immediately review the project allocation and ensure an equitable distribution of resources. Alongside demanding infrastructural inclusion, PANDEF criticized the slow progress on the East-West Road and apparent abandonment of key seaports in Warri, Port Harcourt, One, and Calabar. While demanding justice, the group reaffirmed its commitment to maintaining a peaceful environment to support national oil and gas production. Moving on, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has partnered with the Kids and Teens Resource Center, KTRC, to boost voters' registration awareness in Ondo State. This collaborative campaign was launched to combat